So, before I make my contribution with regard to this legislation, I want to put on the record again my dissatisfaction with the fact that the Senior Minister is not here again. And Minister Troy will know that we were not happy previously when the Minister didn't appear, and again we see the Senior Minister has not appeared once more. This is a pattern. So the last time I spoke on this, I said I sincerely hope this is not a pattern, but you wouldn't need a microscope to figure out that there is a pattern here, and it is a disrespectful pattern as it goes. So I would ask, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to the Minister who was here, but I would ask that you would convey to your senior ministerial colleague the dissatisfaction that once again he has not seen fit to turn up to discuss his own legislation. We were asked to waive PLS on this particular piece of legislation, a request that we acceded to, so there's clearly no desire on our part to delay or anything else, but I do think it has to be recorded once again that we are discussing legislation and the Senior Minister is not here. Having said that, we broadly welcome the legislation. We waived the PLS, you'll be aware of that. The purpose of this bill is to address simply operational issues in respect of compliance arising under the Companies Act 2014 and the Industrial and Provident Societies Acts 1893 to 2018. As resulting from the COVID-19 public health emergency. These changes include the ability to hold meetings such as AGMs through video technology for the use of electronic communications in general during the interim period, increasing the debt threshold at which a company can be wound up and increasing the examinership period. These elements of the bill, which deal with instances in which companies and small businesses struggle with debt, are very much to be welcomed. I would suggest to the Minister that these be examined for permanent insertion into the legislation. This is something I would be very interested in pursuing, and I sincerely hope that I will have an opportunity to discuss this further with you. The severe pressure on their cash flow and the threshold at which businesses are deemed unable to pay their debts for the purpose of being wound up by the courts are extremely low in normal times at €10,000. So it is imperative that these are increased during these extraordinary times. I know of some organisations such as ISME that have been proposing changes to administrative insolvency where matters can be discussed between parties to achieve a resolution without going down the examinership route. I think as we move through the COVID crisis, organisations such as those representing small and medium businesses and micro businesses should be brought into the fold by the Department. I think that they have a lot to offer on how we can help businesses get through this difficult period. They do not have all the answers, and I certainly do not always agree with their perspective, most especially in the issues of workers' rights. That said, they can bring a unique perspective and they do need to be listened to. The bill makes changes which seek to support as many businesses as possible, with changes to the debt threshold at which a business can be wound up, thus helping them trade through the crisis and support their economic recovery, and to preserve employment. But as I have said previously, the preservation of employment can't be just for the preservation of employment's sake. They have to be decent jobs, they have to be jobs that are worth having, they have to be jobs that can pay the bills, and they shouldn't be jobs that require a long-term support from the state. Increasing the period of examinership by 50 days provides a similar support and will allow businesses additional breathing space within which to formulate restructuring plans. Can I add, however, that much more needs to be done? I know many SMEs, micro-businesses and small family businesses looked on at the July stimulus and they were disappointed at what was announced, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of workers in the hospitality and accommodation sectors who were gravely disappointed by the government's offering. Businesses were waiting weeks for the government's July stimulus package, and now that it's been announced, many are calling it a lost opportunity. Businesses are struggling to get back up and running. They've been calling out for liquidity injections through grants. Instead of a comprehensive and funded grant scheme, businesses are instead being asked to take on more debt through loans, which is something that they say they cannot do. The July stimulus package has a 4-to-1 debt-to-grant ratio, which flies in the face of what the government has been advocating for in Europe. An Taoiseach Micheál Martin spent a full weekend preaching about the need for grants in Brussels, but when he comes home, he talks only about debt. Businesses were calling out for an economic lifebuoy, and the government has thrown them a bit bit of an anchor, let's be honest. The changes in the bill around the ability to hold meetings, such as AGMs, through video technology and for the use of electronic communications in general during the interim period will help to streamline proceedings for those businesses, but it is also necessary from a health and safety perspective. These changes are welcome. They'll make business operation much easier, but it will also offer proactive health and safety precautions for directors and board members too. The speed at which the legislation is rushed through to protect the health and safety of company directors and board members is, however, in stark contrast to the failure of the state to legislate to protect ordinary workers on the shop floor or the hospital ward or in the meat factory. The ICTU have been to the fore in campaigning for a simple change by way of regulation, not even legislation, to make workplace outbreaks of COVID-19 notifiable to the Health and Safety Authority. At the stroke of a pen, in an office in government buildings, workers could have had additional protections for their health and safety. Minister Humphreys refused to do this, and Tánaiste de Varadkar is now also refusing to make this change. Instances of COVID-19 in workplaces such as meat plants were rife during the lockdown period, and many workers were put in danger because of the rapid development of clusters. Was there any emergency legislation rushed through to protect these workers? Not a single thing was done for their health and safety. Maybe if they wore a suit, a tie to work and carried a briefcase, there might have been a little bit more concern. But they wear Snickers workwear, they wear overalls, they are ordinary people, and they just don't really get onto your radar very often. The simple change that we and the Irish Congress of Trade Unions requested is that COVID-19 be designated as a notifiable illness in the meaning of the Health, Safety and Welfare at Work Act, which essentially means that if you contract COVID-19 in the course of your work, that it is classified as an occupational injury. I would have thought that that would be fairly plain. If you contract an injury or a disease or a virus in work as a result of your work, well then it is an occupational injury. But this government seem reluctant to acknowledge that. It is our hope that the necessary regulations will be amended. That said, we're not pessimists, we're optimists with experience. So we have a piece of legislation that we will table if it becomes necessary. So I want to refer briefly to the ESRI report, which showed us that workers such as carers, meat plant employees, taxi drivers, security guards, cleaners and migrant workers are those who are most at risk of severe adverse outcomes from COVID-19. I would call on the government to work with the representative bodies and the trade unions to ensure that policies and strategies are put in place to proactively protect the health, safety and welfare of workers in work and not just company directors. It also highlights the hypocrisy of this government when it comes to workers, how different categories from different sectors have been treated, and they can see that. They look in here and they see what's going on. There are only 67 Health and Safety Authority inspectors available to carry out inspections of the Return to Work Safety Protocol. This protocol was designed to support employers and protect workers as they return to work. It was developed following a very high-level dialogue among the ICTU and employer representatives. It has really good information and safety recommendations, and the HSA was tasked with carrying out Return to Work Safety Protocol inspections, but they only have 67 inspectors, as I found out when you responded to a parliamentary question. This situation is farcical, it makes a mockery of the protocol, and it puts workers and their health at risk. We need to get real about workers' rights during COVID-19. We need to protect the worker in the supermarket or the meat factory just as much as the company director down here in the IFSC. The bill is welcome. Aspects of it will make significant changes, which will be good to protect the public health and protect businesses during this crisis. But it is only the tip of the iceberg as to what is needed to be done to protect workers and to support businesses. And while I have the opportunity, Alaska Corla, if I could, I want to make reference to, because this is the company's miscellaneous provisions COVID-19 bill, I want to make reference to the company that runs the houses of the Oireachtas, the Houses of the Oireachtas Commission. Last night the Commission met for the first time. There were, I think, 8 nominees between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Labour Party and the Green Party. And I regret to inform, although I doubt anyone, particularly the women in this establishment, will be in any way surprised or shocked, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Green Party and the Labour Party did not nominate one single solitary woman. So what message does that send out from this institution. I see the message it sends out from Sinn Féin that we have no difficulty nominating women to these positions because I was nominated by my party and by my party leader. But it sends a message out there. So on the one hand, we say to corporate bodies that you need to be mindful of diversity and inclusion, and on the other hand, we say jobs for the boys, more of the same. We have to lead by example. We cannot stand here and talk about equality and then fail to back it up. Not one woman. There's 8 nominations that you could have had between the 4 parties, and you couldn't find one single solitary woman to nominate to the company that runs the Oireachtas. Can I ask Minister Troy that you go back to your parliamentary party, that you go back to your government partners, and that you look again and see if you can do better and maybe try harder.